Hello everyone, welcome to Cottage and Crime Time. If you enjoy this video, please like it and subscribe. I will really appreciate it. If you have subscribed, thank you so much. Just a quick disclaimer, this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research and form your own opinions. Let's listen to a phone call.
Emergency? I need an ambulance. Lots of. You need an ambulance? Yes, please. What's your name, sir? Henry.
The place is Stellenbosch, a beautiful student town surrounded by mountains and wine farms. In the Zalze estate, next to a wine farm, a very secure place surrounded by walls, electric wire, 24-hour patrols, cameras, and a security gate, the unthinkable has happened. A family of 5 have brutally been attacked with an axe. At 7 in the morning, Henry made the phone call that you just listened to. He was the son and brother of the people inside the house who have been attacked. Sergeant Adrian Kleinans was first on the scene. And Henry pointed inside and said, "Upstairs." The sergeant went inside. He had his weapon with him, not knowing what he'd find. And up the stairs, he found the gruesome scene. He found the bodies of Rudy, Martin, Teresa, and still living Marley, but barely. Immediately, medical services come and take Marley to the nearest hospital. There is a lot of blood. Immediately, the police find a couple of strange things. There's no forced entry. There's no sign that anyone wanted to rob the family. Teresa's handbag was still on the table. And they immediately think that Henry is a bit suspicious. When the police asked him in front of the house a couple of things, he just said that an unknown assailant came and attacked the family and him. And he said that he got hold of the axe and threw it against the wall. But get this, he tells them there's a fresh mark on the wall. You can look and see what I'm saying is true. He didn't use that paraphrase, but he said there's a mark on the wall. Very specific there. So immediately the police think of him as a suspect. They, however, did not want to treat him as a suspect. They wanted to treat him as a victim and a witness, because then they thought they would get more out of him. So first they took him to the hospital, and there the policeman said to the doctor, "Could you please look if these injuries are self-inflicted?" And she did. And we will get to what she said later on in the trial. They took his bloody clothes. His pants were full of blood. And they took him to a room wearing only his boxers. Henry would later claim that they told him that Marley was awake and speaking. The police denied this. He then made a statement where he was, and we will get back to that yet again. So let's first talk about the Van Breda family. They were a close-knit family. Martin, the dad, was a very wealthy businessman. He studied civil engineering at the University of Stellenbosch, and then he did his MBA at the University of Pretoria. He met Teresa, who studied computer science and worked at MBA in 1983. 7 years later, they were married. They were very hardworking, career people, and then they started a family. First, Rudy was born, and then Henry, and finally Marley. In 1998, she was born. Martin and Teresa doted on their family. They wanted the best at the best schools, everything that they could want. But Martin did expect his children and Teresa to do well in school and to study and have careers. They were really, really rich. We are talking about 200 million rands approximately in the end. And yet, Martin expected his kids to contribute to society and careers. So Rudy is described throughout his life as being popular. He excelled in sports and school. He had loads of friends, and everybody just liked his easygoing attitude. Molly was a beautiful blonde girl. She enjoyed shopping, spending time with her friends, and trying to get people to come on vacation with them so that she would have her friends there. And the family took a lot of vacations, luxury vacations, and they seemed like a very close-knit family. So when we talk of Henry, he is described as being quiet, playing video games, enjoying his own company, and that by no means is any indication of what happened later. I myself am a loner, so that's no indication, that's just a description. So the family, at a certain point, they moved to Australia to get out of the crime situation of South Africa. And the boys, or the young men, attended the University of Melbourne. Rudy did really, really well. He got his degree in science and he started with his master's degree. Henry was studying as well, but in the middle of the school year, he left and he came with his family to South Africa. Or his family was already in South Africa and then he came. They moved back because Martin invested in a private school company in South Africa. He was very passionate about education. Rudy stayed at the university longer, and it doesn't make sense that Henry would leave the university in the middle of the academic year and then have a gap year. So people would speculate that, that he dropped out or that he had to start the year over again or something along those lines. But nonetheless, he was back in South Africa with his family and they lived in Zalze in Stellenbosch. Marley attended a very prestigious private school, Somerset College, that's near the estate. And like I said, they seemed like this close-knit, perfect family. So the story Henry told the police was that on the morning, in the early morning of the 27th, he said that he went to the bathroom and he didn't switch on the light, he just took his phone. Now, in South Africa, we are no strangers to electricity going out and having to deal with it. But it's still very convenient that he didn't switch on the light and just use his cell phone. And that at that very specific moment, the attacker came. And he first brutally murdered Rudy. That was the most violent of the attacks. And then Martin, Rudy's dad, came in and he was the next victim. And third was Teresa. And then Marley was injured and fighting for her life. So this is the story that Henry told the police. So obviously people hoped that Marley, when she recovered, she could tell what happened. Fortunately, she did recover. It took quite a while and she had to go to a rehabilitation center to help her. In the end, she didn't testify at the trial and she couldn't remember what happened that evening. She had a kind of short-term amnesia. Until this day, she doesn't remember what happened. So let's talk about the trial. Before the trial, it took a year and a half for the police to arrest Henry. They prepared a docket and the powers that be looked at it and sent it back 3 times. Now, legal proceedings does take a long time, but for an arrest to be made only a year and a half later, quite a while. During that time, Henri met another girl. He met Danielle, and they were going out, and then a year and a half later, he was arrested. At the time, there were lots of reports about them, and people were talking about the extended family, and so on and so forth. I'm going to focus on the trial now, and I will say a couple of things at the end of that. So what happened was that, okay, the trial started, and let's talk about where the holes in the story, how that came about. So first of all, during the cross-examination, the police pointed out that his initial statement started to change. And it seems like little insignificant details, like he had 2 glasses of red wine, and then he changed it to he had 2 glasses of red wine and whiskey. So it's seemingly insignificant, but I think all true crime enthusiasts, I don't know, that's not the correct word, but people that watch true crime will know that that's a way to catch people out, catch them out in the small lies, and then the bigger lies will come out, and sometimes you catch them that way. Either way, it put him in the light of not being a credible witness. So the first couple of things that the defense could talk away was firstly that the accusation that someone else couldn't have been in the house. They proved that the prosecution proved that someone could jump the wall. Obviously, the patrols weren't in front of the house 24 hours, and the cameras have blind spots. Also, there were no burglar bars, and the windows were open, and if the person wore gloves, then it is possible that an unknown assailant could access the house. So they could explain that away. They could also explain away the little differences in his initial statement, saying that, he was only in his boxers and he was in this cold room. He just seen this terrible thing and he just wanted to get out of there. So they could explain that away. The other thing was this phone call, and I played a little bit of it, and I will put a link down below to the full phone call. And the first thing I just want to mention is that the operator did not handle it very well. She would testify that she thought it was a prank call. And I must say, when I listen to it, I understand where she's coming from a bit. But at the same time, you are supposed to treat every single phone call as serious. I think I somewhere saw a case in the US where someone pretended that they wanted to order pizza, and it was sort of a cover for what was really going on and asking for help. Also, finding the address, the time it took for them to finally send help, they got a lot of scrutiny for that, the emergency services. Henri would say that the reason for this is that he stutters, and that when he was growing up, people would tell him that if he's stressed, he will stutter a lot. And also, people do react differently in very, very stressful and traumatic situations. What I do find suspicious, regardless of that, is that he never really urges the fact that his family is seriously injured and people need to get there and help them as quickly as possible. Okay, so they could explain away this phone call and his reactions and everything. So let's give them that. There's 3 holes in the story according to me. This is my opinion. The first one is his injuries. The doctor that initially treated him testified that the cuts, the angle, the depth, etc. were all indications that his wounds were self-inflicted. So that's damning evidence. Secondly, a blood expert also testified and said that Henri's story didn't make sense. the way the details of how he fell and where he fell and things like that, it didn't line up. And then to me, the biggest thing for me personally is the fact that at 4:42, he phoned his love interest of the time. She would say that she wasn't his girlfriend, Bianca van der Westhuizen. She also testified. She did not answer that phone call because she was at sleep at 4:42. But she got the phone call the next morning. But right after that, again, very conveniently for him, he says that he passed out for 3 hours. And this was disproven, this was debunked by, again, the doctor, who said that if you pass out for 3 hours, they will know if you have a concussion. And I mean, he was treated at the hospital. So he waited 3 hours before he phoned, and Marie was fighting for his life. For her life, sorry. And the thing is, luckily, he didn't know that Marie was alive, because otherwise he would have finished the job. But it's just awful to think that she was lying there and she was in pain and fighting for her life. And then you hear this phone call, and people would say that they hear a giggle in his voice on the phone call. So just very, very, very disturbing. So obviously, at the trial, before the trial, people were speculating and news outlets were bringing about theories about why he could have possibly done this. So, as someone who watches true crime, I don't think we will ever understand exactly why people do this. But if we wanted to look for some kind of motive, the first theory would be the drug theory. Some of his university friends would say that he actually had the nickname Druggy in Melbourne at the university. And then it is a fact that he and Bianca, his girlfriend, got arrested for possession of marijuana. So he definitely smoked marijuana. The thing that can't be proven is that they also say that he was on tic. That's a local name for crystal meth. And that's a drug that is known for violent outbursts and psychotic episodes. The thing, however, is even with the marijuana theory, because we know that he smoked that, is that when they finally tested his bloody clothes and he also had urine on him, they didn't find anything. But for some reason, they only tested his blood and urine months later. So that could have been wrong. And marijuana doesn't necessarily cause violent outbursts at all. In fact, it makes people very calm most of the time. But there are incidences where that could happen. And combining drugs and alcohol, you never know exactly how that's going to go. And, you know, there were people saying that he went to a clinic to treat his drug problem. It would explain why maybe he left in the middle of the academic year. So people and news outlets really ran with that theory. Like I said, they couldn't prove that in court because they took too long to do the tests. And we know that he used alcohol, but that doesn't really explain everything. They would also say that maybe his dad threatened to disown him because he was on drugs. So that's a possibility. Maybe the fact that he first went for Rudy, maybe he felt that he didn't compare favorably to him, that his dad was disappointed and compared him to Rudy. That could have been something that happened. The thing is just that he couldn't have just snapped because this attack happened in the early morning. So Henri would have had time to think about this. Not that it makes it better when you snap and do something like this, but premeditation is just always a bit worse somehow, in my opinion. He had time to cool off from whatever may have happened. And according to him, the family just had dinner and a couple of glasses of wine, and then they went to bed. But if there had been a fight, one of the neighbors' kids said that they are hearing loud noises when they went to bed. So maybe there was a fight. Maybe he did get angry, but it's just there was time for him to cool down from that. So Henri was found guilty. His girlfriend at the time would be very persistent that he was innocent. She and the aunt of Henri did an interview, 60-minute Australia, because the case was also a big deal in Australia because they lived there for quite some time, but it also made other international headlines. So the aunt said something really strange. I didn't listen to it again, but back then I listened to it, and I just remember the aunt saying that whether or not he did it, it doesn't matter. She's just going to support him. I can get the support, but it would matter if he did it or not, regardless. So that's just very, very strange. You can also go and look that up. It's just 60-minute Australia, Henri van Breda, or the Van Breda family murders. And then another thing I just wanted to add was that I read something interesting that I didn't know about, but it makes a lot of sense. And that is the bloody hand clause or principle that's in the law. And that states that you can't use the money or inherit the money if you murdered the person. So in Henri's case, his legal fees were paid with money from his parents, and it was millions and millions. And he was found guilty. So that would mean that he owed that money. But he already had 3 life sentences, 15 years for the attempted murder of Marley, and then some other time for obstruction of justice. So he would have paid that back. And then I thought, well, that's always the case. You get life when you murder someone, and you're not going to pay that money back, even if you used the person's money. But it does make sense that they don't inherit the money, because then they could use that money for whatever they would want to use it. So it makes sense, but I'm just saying that it's very eerie to think that they are using the money to defend themselves or the person that they did. So that is the story of the Van Breda's. The source that I will book, there's 2 book sources. I think that the Zalze murders are the most comprehensive one. It's a reporter of the Report newspaper. He followed the case very, very closely. It starts off with the whole emergency phone call, what was said, and the trial is covered extensively, and he was there from the beginning and following it very closely. When it comes to the extended family, I think that there's a lot of speculation, and he did speak to Martin's twin brothers and things like that, but for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to go into the family and speculate who of them believed what. None of them outright said that they think Henri did it. They never did that. There obviously is speculations, and we will never know what went on behind closed doors. I mean, there's also a friend of Teresa that spoke out, and she would say that, her kids wouldn't play with Henri when they were little and things like that. But again, that's not an indication of anything. So you can read that book to get the full information. Obviously, when I make, or anyone makes YouTube videos of this kind, we get the information and then we have to decide what we're going to put in and how to best present it that it makes sense. So I hope this makes sense, and I really hope to see you next week, Friday. And I just want to say that there's always room for improvement. I want to do this over and over again to make it perfect. Still working on a microphone situation, so the sound system will get better. I'm not going to get in the microphone that I bought, and I first have to wait before I buy another one, because this is just something that I do, so I'm not gonna, spend that much money. But I'm in the process of that. I know microphones aren't that expensive. Just want that one to get that one working. So that will improve, and I think as time goes on, like I said, I think I will get more comfortable. I've already been more comfortable in this one. So I hope to see you in the next video. It will be next Friday. And yes, please remember to like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely week and a lovely day.